Please be seated.
The confirmation of charges hearing in the case The Prosecutor versus Joseph Kony took place from the 9th to 10th September 2025 in The Hague before Pre-Trial Chamber 3 of the International Criminal Court ICC, composed of Judge Althea Violet Alexis Windsor, presiding judge, Judge Yulia Motok, and Judge Heikel Ben Mahfoud. The parties and participants were called upon to present their oral observations before the chamber on the merits. The hearing was held in the absence of the suspect, who was represented by defense counsel Peter Haynes, KC. The presiding judge, Judge Althea Violet Alexis Windsor, addressed the unique nature of the current confirmation of charges proceedings in the absence of the accused.
This case is the first at the International Criminal Court where the confirmation proceedings and hearings are held in absentia, in the absence of the suspect, pursuant to Article 61, 2b of the Rome Statute, which sets out the requirements for holding such proceedings. On the 29th of October 2024, this chamber decided that all the requirements set forth under Article 61, 2b were met, and this still holds true today. In this regard, it is important to note that trials, unlike confirmation hearings, may not take place in absentia. That is to say, if the charges are confirmed, a trial will not take place in the absence of Mr. Kony, who has the right to be present at his trial pursuant to Article 67, 1d.
Joseph Kony is suspected of crimes against humanity, murder, attempted murder, enslavement, forced marriage, rape, torture, severe abuse and mistreatment, forced pregnancy, and persecution. And war crimes: murder, attempted murder, torture, cruel treatment of civilians, intentionally directing an attack against a civilian population, pillaging, destroying the enemy's property, rape, sexual slavery, forced pregnancy, conscription of children, and the use of children to participate actively in hostilities, allegedly committed in 2003 and 2004 in northern Uganda. During the confirmation of charges hearing, charges against Joseph Kony were read out in the courtroom before the parties and participants took the floor to present their opening statements. For the prosecution, Deputy Prosecutor Nyang presented the prosecution opening statements.
Mesdames et Messieurs les juges, vous avez accepté de tenir cette audience.
Your Honours, you have agreed to hold this confirmation of charges hearing against Joseph Kony. The dock is empty of any potential accused. Joseph Kony is not present here today. 20 years ago, other judges of this court issued a warrant of arrest against him. He has been at large for the last 20 years. And for the last 20 years, he has managed to evade justice. This international justice that the government of Uganda and the many victims, particularly in northern Uganda, have sought, as they were unable to render justice in their own country.
Deputy Prosecutor Nyang further detailed the various crimes that were committed by the LRA during the charge period, which Joseph Kony was a founder and a leader. He presented videos photos, documents, among other evidence before the chamber.
Et il s'agit de crimes dont des hommes
These crimes, whose victims include men, women, children, and young girls, will forever remain part of the dark pages of Uganda's history. These crimes include murder, different forms of slavery, rape, inhuman and degrading treatment, and many other acts that the prosecution intends to present at this hearing on the merits. The crimes were committed by an armed group, the Lord's Resistance Army, to which I shall refer to using its initials, the LRA. And in English, it is known as the Lord's Resistance Army. So these crimes were committed by the LRA under the orders of Joseph Kony. Your Honours, Joseph Kony, whom we see here in this photograph, has always been the leader of the LRA, upon which he imposed his cruel vision. He also moulded the group to his own image.
Deputy Prosecutor Nyang acknowledged the tireless efforts of the prosecution, the registry, and other partners who assisted in efforts to move the case forward. He further thanked the victims and other partners for cooperating with the Office of the Prosecutor.
Joseph Kony reste une personne introuvable.
Joseph Kony remains untraceable within the meaning of the statute. Today's hearing is a very important step in the administration of justice. The prosecution has only been able to bring the case to this stage of the proceedings thanks to the courage of the victims and affected communities. It is also thanks to the excellent cooperation of the Ugandan authorities, traditional leaders, states, organizations, and all partners. Continued cooperation is crucial to bringing Joseph Kony's fight to an end for once and for all.
Next, Ms. Sarah Pele, one of the common legal representative of victims, took the floor to present their opening statements on behalf of victims represented in this case.
Madam President, Your Honours, together with Paulina Mesida, Francisco Cox, Joseph Manoba, and Paul Bradfield, we appear before you today to speak on behalf of the 5,795 victims authorized to participate in the present proceedings as of the 12th of August. It is an honor to represent these women, men, and children whose lives were destroyed by the acts of Joseph Kony and his Lord's Resistance Army, or LRA. The victims have waited for more than 2 decades for this moment. They have waited for more than 2 decades for their pain to be acknowledged, for their loss to be recognized, for justice to be done in their name. All these victims have waited long enough, Your Honours. Some have been waiting since July 2002, when the LRA's first attacks hit their villages. Some will not live to see the conclusion of these proceedings. But they all deserve to know that their suffering has not gone unnoticed, that the world has heard them, and that those responsible will be held accountable. And amongst them, the suspect, Mr. Kony.
Ms. Pele further described in detail the suffering that the victims have endured after the LRA attacks. Ms. Pele read out excerpts of victims' testimony before the chamber, before concluding her opening statements.
The confirmation hearing in the present case and your subsequent decision will not undo the past. It will not bring back the brothers killed before the eyes of a 12-year-old, or the child torn from her mother's arms, nor erase the suffering inflicted on the victim by the LRA under Kony's command. But it will tell these victims that what they endured mattered, that justice can reach even the most powerful perpetrators, that impunity ends here. And, as already been stated, it may also reinvigorate state's commitment to locating Joseph Kony and ensuring his surrender to this court. That is why victims are participating in these proceedings. That is what they ask of you.
Peter Haynes, lead counsel for Joseph Kony, began his opening statements by addressing the impact of the absence of Joseph Kony in the confirmation of charges hearing.
It's important that the public knows and understands the stance we have taken in these proceedings and what steps we have taken to fulfill that mandate. We have argued publicly, including before the Appeals Chamber of the International Criminal Court, that we consider these proceedings not to be consistent with the ICC's statutory framework. We have also collated and presented voluminous testimonial evidence from the leaders and people of northern Uganda who believe them to be misguided, harmful to ongoing repatriation and reconciliation efforts, and divisive. The court's decision, both in terms of legality and whether this is all a good idea, was to proceed. And today we are here on what is undoubtedly a milestone for the court, the first confirmation hearing of a suspect who has never appeared, with the chair at the back of the courtroom sitting empty. It is also important to understand how that empty chair has impacted the defence preparations and how it informs and limits the position that we will be taking in these proceedings.
Mr. Geoffrey Boris Anyuru, a member of the defense team for Mr. Kony, presented brief remarks about this confirmation of charges hearing and its impact.
With respect to these proceedings, the prosecution has not found any information to continue with these proceedings. Look, the prosecutor has shown everything that happened. They showed everything that happened in this court about 20 years ago. These things show our brothers and sisters in northern Uganda who were suffering, who had emotional and psychological problems. And we have a feeling that these showing of these pictures, showing these photos that the prosecutor has shown will cause more harm. It will re-traumatize them because they are seeing their relatives, they are seeing their brothers, they are seeing their sisters. This will cause them post-traumatic disorder. This is going to be shown to people, and anybody who wants to watch these photos or the pictures that were shown by the prosecutor will be able to see them again. anybody who wants to see those the photos will be able to go to the computer, switch it on, and watch those photos. And without receiving any information from the people who were aware of it, we will not know whether these things actually happen. We do not know whether we'll be able to hear from these people. As the prosecutor decided to show these pictures are going to have terrible repercussions on the people in northern Uganda who are seeing these photos.
Ms. Lillian Beatrice Otim, a member of the Kony defense team, noted that the confirmation of charges hearing may affect ongoing judicial processes in Uganda. To conclude the defense opening statements, Mr. Peter Haynes addressed the defense's dilemma, which is working on the defense case without Mr. Kony's input.
How can we challenge evidence without instructions as to his likely plea or his comments as to whether he accepted or challenged the evidence in the first place? And then again, there is the ancillary point of how such an approach would be strategically consistent with the stance we have previously taken as to these proceedings, and our concurrent reluctance to appear to provide a template or precedent for how such proceedings might be conducted in the future. Thus, in due course, you may find our submissions will be limited to issues of process and remedy, which we are comfortable fall within our professional and ethical mandate and cause no prejudice, real or potential, to the absent Joseph Kony.
Following the opening statements from the parties and participants, the Chamber gave the floor back to them to present submissions on the merits. Each had an allocated time slot to make submissions. After presenting the merits, the presiding judge welcomed the parties and participants to present their closing statements, starting with the prosecutor. From the prosecution, Ms. Leonie von Braun addressed the efforts poured into finding the suspect, Joseph Kony. Finally, she also addressed the victims in this case.
I conclude my submissions by commending the witnesses and victims in this case. I have had the honor of meeting quite a few in northern Uganda, and the conversations have directly influenced how the prosecution has approached its case. I would have welcomed to be in Uganda today, but I wish to tell victims and witnesses sincerely that this today is not the end. The Office of the Prosecutor, though far away here in The Hague, continues to pursue justice in this case.
Next, Mr. Joseph Manoba and Mr. Francisco Cox made closing submissions on behalf of the Common Legal Representative of Victims teams.
Participation in these proceedings, and hopefully in later proceedings following on from this Chamber's decision, hopefully confirming the charges against Joseph Kony, will allow not just for the truth behind the violent attacks on civilians to be told, but through the CLRV, most victims will be able to get a listening ear of someone patient enough to listen to their unique audios of victimization, and who in turn will bring it in due time to the judges and the world to know their story of emotion, pain, and suffering. Participation in the court proceedings will thus provide victims with agency to tell their stories of the LRA violence.
Madam President, Your Honors, thank you for the opportunity to addressing you on behalf of 5,795 victims. Your Honor, I would like to insist on our request made by my colleague Paul Bradfield in terms of including sexual enslavement. Your Honor, legal characterization is important for victims. Invisibility is something that hurts victims.
Finally, lead counsel for Joseph Kony, Mr. Peter Haynes, made brief closing submissions.
The elephant in the room is this has to stop somewhere. And it doesn't matter whether you call it a stay or an adjournment or some other order of the court. Without an accused, this case is at a dead end. And in the circumstances, given that it has to stop somewhere, a stay prior to the issue of a decision is not drastic at all. And that's all I wish to say.
Following the conclusions of the submissions from the parties and participants, the presiding judge thanked everyone before adjourning the hearings. The purpose of the confirmation of charges hearing is to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to establish substantial grounds to believe that the person committed each of the crimes charged. If one or more of the charges are confirmed, the case will be transferred to a trial chamber, which will conduct the subsequent phase of the proceedings, the trial.